Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share our home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we spoke to Sean from Kin Insurance, and he shared some tips for homeowners insurance. Sean, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Real good. I saw a quote of yours that roofs are the new kitchen. Can you share what you mean by that?
So obviously, kitchens are something people pay a lot of attention to when they're looking at a new house. Why? Well, you spend a lot of time in your kitchen. But one of the most important things that determines how resilient your home is to extreme weather, and therefore your ability to get affordable insurance with reasonable terms, is your roof. It's kind of like the tires on your car, right? Like it's like the protector of your home. And they do actually wear out. And a lot of people, they really don't pay enough attention to their roof when they're buying a home. And then maybe 3 years later, 4 years later, 5 years later, they run into an issue where they can no longer get insurance for their home. And that's especially true in areas where there's more hail, like Colorado, where there's more tornadoes, like Texas, where there's more hurricanes, like maybe Louisiana or Florida. And then they're surprised. Like, oh, shoot, I can't get insurance because I didn't actually pay attention when I was buying the home that the roof was near the end of its life, or maybe that the roof is too old. The roof is the new kitchen.
I heard from a couple people that their insurance company used a drone to check their roof for wear. Is this becoming more common?
It is becoming more common, yeah. Insurance companies have become really sensitive to the state of your roof. And the worst thing that can happen if you're an insurance company is that you signed a customer up and then a year later, there's a hailstorm in the neighborhood and your roof was not built to sustain that type of hail.
Okay.
And now you need an absolute brand new roof. Because if you think about it, the average homeowner's insurance policy in the U.S. is in the ballpark of $1,500 a year. But a brand new roof is typically $30,000 or more, and it can actually be a lot more. And so that insurance company, they're going to have to earn many, many years of premiums in order to pay for that. And so they're becoming very sensitive. They really want to make sure that your roof is in good shape before they underwrite you. And there's a couple different ways they can get that information that they didn't have access to before. And one of them is drone. The other is actually a lot of insurance companies using aerial imagery. So it's not coming from a drone, but it's actually a fixed-wing aircraft.
Wow.
Really good camera. Yeah. And so you won't even notice if that's happening. And in most urban areas of the U.S., or urban or suburban, it's pretty easy to get very high-resolution aerial images taken from an airplane 4 or 5 times a year of your house. And these are very high-resolution. You could see a basketball on your lawn.
Wow, so interesting.
Yeah, and that's cheaper than the drone. And so both are being used. Satellite, too, but satellite, the resolution isn't quite as high.
I'm in the Chicago area, and the last few years after a storm, I get a bunch of companies knocking on the door or leaving brochures saying they can help replace my roof because of hail damage.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. And I get that. I live in the Chicago area, too.
Okay.
And I get that a lot, too. And Chicago is not actually particularly hail-prone. Downstate, Minneapolis, many areas of Wisconsin, they're more hail-prone. And those areas are all less hail-prone than like in Oklahoma or Texas. But this does happen. It happens all over the country. And it's really not good because if you think about it, the roofer you want is a roofer that's great at roofs, not great at knocking on doors. I had it in my neighborhood not that long ago. And we really didn't have a hailstorm in my neighborhood. But the way hailstorms are pretty localized, right? So a few towns over, they did have some hail. My dog was walking out in the lawn, and this guy comes up, and he goes, "Oh, hey, your dog's really cute." It's like, "Thanks." Because, you could get a free roof. I was, really? Okay, tell me more.
Right.
And he goes, "Well, yeah, there were a lot of people that had hail damage, and we're just going around." And it's like, "Well, we didn't really have hail in this neighborhood." He goes, "Well, that doesn't really matter because we could still submit a claim for hail, and the insurance company isn't going to know the difference." It was like, well, that actually kind of sounds like insurance fraud to me.
Right.
And he goes, no, don't worry about that. They'll never know the difference. I said, okay, well, I'll ask you some more questions just because I'm curious. I have a deductible on my insurance policy, just like everybody else. It's like the deductible on my insurance policy is $2,500. Like, how do you deal with that? Oh, don't worry about that. We'll pay that for you. Okay, in most states, that's illegal, including Illinois. They're not allowed to pay the deductible for you. It's like, okay, you just, within the span of a minute, you suggested two things that are illegal. But people don't know this, right?
Sure,
and so a lot of people get sucked in. And what do they end up? They end up in a conflict with the insurance company because the insurance companies are getting savvy to this. They end up with a roof provided by a company that probably isn't the best roofing company. And so that's a big problem, right? It's a big problem for the customer. It also is the driver of a lot of the costs that are going up. So in a lot of areas, Illinois included, Illinois actually had one of the biggest increases in insurance costs for homeowners in the last couple of years. Because when one customer does that scam and they have their whole roof replaced when maybe it didn't need it, that actually causes the prices to go up for everybody.
Sure.
So it creates this sort of like vicious cycle where everybody's paying more for their insurance because they were basically to benefit these sketchy roofers. If you have real hail damage, call your insurance company and they'll send out an adjuster and they'll look at your roof and make sure that you do, right? Sure. And then you can shop for a local roofer that has good reviews from other customers in your neighborhood. And that's probably a better way to do it than just like believing this guy who's knocking on your door probably doesn't actually know that much about roofs.
Another quote I saw from you was skipping flood insurance can be a devastating decision for a homeowner. Can you explain why?
So a lot of people don't know this, but a homeowner's insurance policy actually by default does not cover flooding, which is really surprising, right?
It is, yeah.
It's a little weird. So like if a pipe bursts in your house, your homeowner's insurance will cover that.
Okay.
If it rains really hard and the sewer outside your house, storm sewer outside your house backs up and water comes in to your basement and floods it, that's not covered by a homeowner's policy. And those can be really very devastating incidents. So probably the best example of this was actually in North Carolina this past year. They got hit by what was really the remnants of a hurricane. It just dropped a ton of rain and a lot of homes flooded. And that was really, really devastating for those homeowners. And many of them did not have any insurance coverage for that. And many of them thought that they did because you just assume homeowners insurance covers floods, but it usually doesn't. So a flood policy is separate. When you're buying it, there's like a little checkbox that says, hey, would you like to add flood insurance? It does cost a little extra, but it's really important. Like if you live in a flood plain, in a FEMA designated flood zone, maybe you're right next to a river, or maybe you're right next to the ocean. The banks, the mortgage companies, they do require you to have it.
Okay.
But if you're not in a FEMA designated flood zone, they don't. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have it just because your mortgage company doesn't require you to. Because actually, the majority of flood losses happen to people that aren't in flood zones.
Interesting.
Yeah, just because you're not in a flood zone doesn't mean it never floods there. That just means it floods less often. So a lot of the times, those customers who are in a less risky area, they still should buy flood insurance. And the good news is for those customers, it's really cheap. And you're insuring yourself against this pretty unlikely thing. But if it happened, it would completely trash your house.
Sure. If you have damage to your home from a sewer backup, is that covered by most policies?
Sewer backup is typically covered under a homeowner's policy.
Okay.
But not always. But oftentimes a homeowner's policy will have sewer backup coverage up to $10,000 or up to $20,000 or something like that. So these are all separate topics, right? You have your homeowner's policy. Then you want to understand, does it cover sewer backup? Is there a sub-limit on that, which means it wouldn't pay out the full value of the policy. It would pay out that sub-limit.
Okay.
And then flood is actually a completely separate third thing, which is water coming from outside the house into your house.
If I'm a new homeowner, do you have a checklist for what I should be looking for in a homeowner's policy?
Yeah, and you really should be starting this before you put the offer on the home because it could actually really impact your affordability. You could have two homes in the same neighborhood, and because they're built differently, one might be twice as expensive to insure as the next one, and that can have an impact on affordability. So you really want to probably get a homeowner's insurance quote before you put an offer on the home. You don't need to buy the policy, but you want to sort of know what your options are. And then the checklist is sort of like this for me. It's really simple. First, make sure that you're insuring it to the correct value. The homeowner's policy is only going to cover up to what's called the coverage A. which is really the insured value of the home. And it's actually hard to know because the insured value is different than the market value of your home.
Okay.
Because, of course, when you're buying a home, you're paying for the house, but you're also paying for the land. The land doesn't need to be rebuilt if your home burns down. Just the home does. And so the insured value will typically be less. In some areas, a lot less. If it's an area where real estate's really expensive, if you're in Palo Alto, California, the insured value might be quite a bit less than the market value. And the insurance agent or the insurance company, depending on if you're working with a direct insurance company like Kin, or if you're working with independent insurance agent, which is sort of the more old school way of doing it, they're going to help you choose the insured value, but it's really your responsibility. And you really don't want to end up with an underinsured home. And you do need to sanity check them because the insurance agents, they all want to sell the policy. And they're going to try to make it look as cheap as they can because it increases their likelihood of the sale.
Sure.
And sometimes, unfortunately, they'll actually manipulate down the coverage A, which makes the policy cheaper, but it is giving you less coverage. So you really want to double check that insured value of the home or coverage A. Am I sure that I could rebuild the home if it burnt to the ground for this amount of money? That's the first on my checklist. Second is flood insurance, which we already talked about. You really want to make sure you have flood insurance, or at least make a conscious decision not to buy it. Probably most people should have flood insurance. Third, let's make sure that your deductibles are set properly. So the deductible is how much do you have to pay before the insurance kicks in.
Okay.
And this is actually one of the best ways that people can save money on their insurance is by just thinking about their deductible. If you're the kind of person that has $5,000 sitting around, right? Maybe you have that in savings, you have it for a rainy day. You probably don't need an insurance policy with a $1,000 deductible. And you could save a lot of money, right?
Sure.
If a bad thing happens, maybe you need to repair your roof or your window breaks or something like that. If it's below the deductible, you can actually just go fix that yourself. Make sure the deductible is something that A, you can afford. Maybe you set your deductible at $10,000 and you don't have $10,000. It's a big problem. But also make sure that you're not setting it so low because it is one of the variables that has a big sort of like asymmetric impact on the policy. The policy with the $5,000 deductible could be a lot cheaper than the policy with the $1,000 deductible. So if you have $5,000 anyway, you might as well have the higher deductible and save yourself some money. That's another key one. The other one that's really important is check out the sublimits on your policy. There might be a sublimit for things like sewer backup, for things like your personal property, right? Like if you have jewelry or something like that, you might be surprised to find that there's a sublimit of $1,000 per piece of jewelry. All right, well, if you're the guy with the $5,000 watch, that actually might be a problem for you. And you might want to pay a little bit extra to have that sublimit be higher. There is a lot of standardization in insurance policies because they are regulated, but they're not all entirely equal. So it pays to ask some of these questions. Another one that's really important that also can be a way of saving money is on a homeowner's insurance policy, you're actually charged separately almost for each part of the policy. So the coverage A covers your main structure. There's also a coverage that covers any extra structures like a garage or a fence. There's also a coverage that covers all the stuff that's inside your house. Those are usually set by like rule of thumb almost. The coverage for what's inside your house is very often set to a percentage of like 25% of the coverage to rebuild your house entirely. For me, at least, and I think this is true for many people, I actually don't have that much stuff that would be expensive to replace inside my house. Right, like you added up all your furniture and clothes and televisions and stuff like that. Usually for a lot of people aren't that much, that they would be 25% of the cost to rebuild your entire home. So it really makes sense to look at those coverages too.
Okay.
The other structures coverage and the stuff inside your home coverage.
Is it important to have an inventory of your personal property?
It can be. Having an inventory of stuff in your house is useful in the circumstance where your house burns entirely to the ground and you can't really remember what was inside your house. I think a lot of people don't do it. Maybe a shorthand way of doing it that's a little simpler is actually just to walk around your house and take a video, because you can always rebuild the inventory later, right? And I don't need to know like, oh, that coffee table was exactly, $500 and I got it on Wayfair and it was this model. Probably for most people, it's fine to just know that there was a coffee table in the living room. So that maybe is a shorthand way of doing it that's not quite as time consuming.
If my home gets damaged, how should I file a claim?
Yeah, for kin, the best way to file a claim is just to go to kin.com and click on the claims button and file it. You can do that from your phone. And then we'll ask you, there's a little pop-up and it'll ask you to describe the claim. And then you'll be routed to a real-life claims person who can help. Now, in the case of a fire, you're going to need accommodations. You're going to need somewhere to stay. And then we're going to want to get somebody out there as quickly as possible to look at it. There's some claims that are maybe a little bit easier to use. If you had hail damage, maybe we could use a drone to analyze that instead of a person. And that's how most insurance companies operate. The agent, I wouldn't recommend contacting the agent because if it's after hours, agents are small businesses and they're not really involved in the claims process.
Okay.
They might not answer the phone. So I would just have in your phone the website, or just know what the website is.
Sure.
So you can navigate to it. And then, as a belt and suspenders, you could actually just save the claims number, the claims phone number. It's an 800 number in most cases for your insurance company, whoever that is, in your contacts in your phone, and just give them a call. And both of those avenues will work at most modern insurance companies. I'd say another thing that's really important is to make sure that your insurance company has good online ratings and reviews from their customers. And there's sites like Google Reviews is usually pretty good. Or Trustpilot is another really good one. You look at BBB reviews, not the rating. That's usually a really good way to just get a peace of mind that your insurance company is one that's going to be easy to deal with and handle your claim well.
Your website says you use technology to simplify the insurance process. What do you mean by that?
One thing that we actually do is we actually have a claims bot that uses our artificial intelligence to predict and identify if there was extreme weather in your area, and we'll text you to check on you. This isn't quite as big an issue in the Chicago area where you are, because we don't get that many natural disasters in Chicago, fortunately.
Right.
But for customers who might live in an area that's impacted by wildfires or tornadoes or hurricanes, as you pointed out, it's actually hard to know what to do. So we like to have a text to our customers saying, hey, we noticed the winds got to 120 miles per hour in your neighborhood. Let us know if you're all right. Let us know if your home is damaged. And then they can actually just file the claim right there from text message. So that's one thing where technology can really help make insurance better. You do a lot of home improvement stuff.
Right.
You know that a home could be built really well, or a home could be built not quite as well, right? Or you used the example of the roof earlier. You might have the roof with the really great 100-year shingles, or you might have the roof with the shingles that, well, maybe they're old, maybe they're worn out, maybe they weren't the highest quality shingles to begin with. Those two homes, when it gets windy, when there is a hailstorm, etc., they're going to react differently. So something that's really important to us here at Kin is we use technology and artificial intelligence to identify the homes that when there is extreme weather, when something bad does happen, they're going to respond better. And we're able to give those customers a lower price. And so for people who are really invested in their homes and doing a lot of upkeep, those are exactly the customers that we want, who are doing a lot of improvements to their homes to make them safer, to make them more resilient, because the weather is getting worse. Some people debate why, but nobody is debating the fact that hurricanes are getting more extreme, tornadoes are getting more extreme, hail is getting more extreme, flooding is getting a lot more frequent, fires are getting more extreme. Like, the weather just is getting worse, and we do need to build our homes differently. We really need to have a defensive mindset around proactively hardening our homes against the weather, making sure that you have the right shingles, making sure that your roof-to-wall connection is strong enough. These are just a few examples of the thousands of things that make a difference to make one home more resilient than the next. So we really pride ourselves on identifying, and we'll still offer, if your home isn't the most well-built, we will usually have an offer for you. It might not be the cheapest in the market, But for those customers that have really invested in hardening their homes, we really want to give them a financial incentive to do that through the form of lower price. And we're using technology to identify the homes that are the most resilient.
Does your company provide insurance in all states?
This is a good question. So insurance in the United States is really funny because it's actually regulated on a state-by-state basis.
Okay.
Which is unusual for financial services. If you think about banks, they're mostly following federal regulations. But insurance companies are mostly following state regulations. So every state is sort of a completely separate thing. Kin is a little bit funny because we are based in Chicago. We actually don't sell insurance in Illinois. Not yet, anyway.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Kin provides insurance in 13 states, and they tend to be the states where there is more weather volatility. So we're very active in California and Texas and Florida and that sort of like coastal belt of states where they just get a lot more extreme weather than we do here in the Chicago area.
Do you have information on your website to help customers with insurance questions?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do at kin.com have a lot of information about helping customers sort through insurance because it is just so complicated. We have a blog where we're always posting stuff around tips and tricks and frequently asked questions. And it's actually a really good source of information to just demystify some of the more complicated things about homeowners insurance.
If I wanted to learn more about your company, where would I go?
Yeah, so our company is named Kin, and our website is kin.com. It's KIN.com. And it's kin like family.
Okay.
But we named ourselves that because, who would you rather have watching after your home than a family member?
Right. All right. Well, I appreciate the information. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
That was a great interview.
Yes, some very interesting information for homeowners. And you can check out their website at kin.com. That's KIN.com.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our ebooks, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, books 1 through 20 on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Fix It Home Improvement.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.